In 1.5 hours from now, we'll know where the Karnataka High Court stands on the entire hijab controversy. To re-jog your memories, this was an issue that played out weeks ago in Karnataka that echoed across the country about whether the hijab can be allowed in educational institutes or not. Today, we're expecting the Karnataka High Court to give its final ruling on this. A 3-judge bench that's headed by the Karnataka Chief Justice Rituraj Avasthi will be pronouncing its order at 10:30 this morning. Ahead of the High Court judgment, prohibitory orders have been imposed in Bengaluru to ensure that authorities are fully prepared in case protests break out. To restrict any form of violence, any form of stir, Section 144 has been imposed in Bengaluru as well as several other districts. Davangere, Hassan, Belagavi, Shivamogga, Gadag, several other districts. Prohibitory orders are in place for the next many days till March 19th. A holiday has also been declared in all schools and colleges across these cities. Internal exams have also been postponed. The High Court, remember, had reserved its judgment in the hijab case on February 25th after hearing this matter for 11 days. And in those 11 days, we've seen some very, very interesting arguments playing out both for and against wearing the hijab in schools and colleges.
The district administration has imposed Section 144 effective. We do not want any celebrations, any protests of the Honorable High Court order. We have to follow the High Court order. All educational institutions at all levels will be closed for the district of Gulbarga, including the city of Gulbarga.
Let's take this across to our reporters on the ground. Nolan Pinto is joining us live from Udupi, which is where this entire hijab controversy had actually begun. Nagarjun Dwarkanath is joining us live from Bengaluru to get us all the updates as and when it comes from the Karnataka High Court. Nolan, I'd like to begin with you. Good morning. You've been tracking this case very closely. You were there out on the streets of Karnataka when protests had happened, when you saw, violence also breaking out in many parts of the state. Today, take us through the kind of steps and prohibitory orders that have been put in place to ensure that kind of a situation doesn't break out again.
Well, good morning, Akshita. In fact, we are standing right outside the Udupi Women's Girls College, where the entire issue actually began way back in December. Now, December 31st is when they actually started to protest, and then they went to the High Court, and we saw what really happened over 11 days of intense hearing. Now, the government does not want to take any sort of chances, and that's one of the reasons why prohibitory orders, Section 144, have been imposed not just in Bengaluru and Udupi, which saw a large number of protests, especially where we are, but in Bengaluru, in Shimogga especially, police personnel, rapid action force personnel, reserve police have been deployed outside because there was sort of stone pelting. Few students also got injured. So the government and the police this time around do not want to take any sort of chances. They want wherever the verdict goes, whatever the court comes out with, that the situation should remain peaceful in the state, and that is why this particular measure has been taken in the state.
To bring in Nagarjun Dwarkanath on this broadcast, Nagarjun, just run our viewers through and re-jog their memories about how this issue has played out in the Karnataka High Court so far. I mentioned that, this hearing went on for 11 days. If you could sum up for us exactly what the petitioner's demand is here.
Well, the students from Udupi moved the High Court initially, and their argument from their advocates was that it's an essential part of their culture and customs. Hijab is an essential part. The Quran's verses were read out by the defendants, and also said that it is mentioned as compulsory, mandated in the Quran itself to wear the hijab, and that was the basic point of argument from the defense lawyers. But however, the government AG did go on to say that we have not said no to hijab, we have only said it is compulsory to wear uniform. People have already signed up before the admission form itself. In middle of the academic course, one cannot come and say that we are not going to adhere to the dress code. We are only saying dress code is compulsory, and we are not bothered about hijab is compulsory or not with the customs. We are not even dwelling into that, going into that realm of hijab is compulsory or not. The government stand is very clear, as the Advocate General put on record, that the government wants to say that in wherever there is uniform compulsory, that's college students or that school students will have to follow the uniform, whatever prescribed by the college development authority or the school authorities. There's no second question or there's no going back. And once again, they put on record the government order. They said that it might also create public order. There was argument about what is public order. If a girl student wears a dupatta or a scarf on her head, will it create a public order? What exactly is a public order? These were the arguments that were made in the course of 11 days. However, the bench that was assembled took a lot of time to put out the judgment. It was reserved almost a week back or more than 10 days back, and today they are going to give out the judgment. By 10:30 to 10:45, we will have a clear picture as to what exactly will happen in terms of the hijab issue. And I feel that if it goes against the students, they're likely to appeal in the Supreme Court, because during the interim order itself, they knocked the doors of the Supreme Court, asking some interim relief against the High Court relief. So if the High Court verdict today doesn't go in according to their terms or in their favor, it's all likely that this case will go to Supreme Court.
That's a good point you made, Nagarjun, about what's played out so far. The order was reserved, but in the meanwhile, the Karnataka High Court made it very clear that till we pass an order, till we come out with a judgment, hijabs will not be allowed in educational institutes. Almost immediately, you had the petitioners moving the Supreme Court on this matter. The top court so far has refused to intervene, saying, let's see what happens in the Karnataka High Court first. And that verdict finally expected from the High Court today. Nolan, Nagarjun, stay on with me. Let's just sum up for you all that's happened so far in the Karnataka High Court. And let me sum up for you all of the updates that have come in from the Karnataka High Court. The arguments both for and against the hijab being allowed in educational institutions. The petitioners here time and again argued that students have been wearing hijab for the last 2 years. Why has it been stopped suddenly? The Karnataka government has maintained it was never allowed. It can't be allowed now either, that students cannot wear hijabs inside their classrooms. Now, the petitioner also stated that the government here, the state, doesn't have the right to regulate religious practices, whether it's in educational institutions or otherwise. The Karnataka government has said that uniformity is a must in educational institutions. Now, the petitioner, in another argument that they put forth time and again, is saying that the hijab must be allowed if there is no threat to law and order. The Karnataka government has said that we're concerned about law and order because of this entire controversy, which is why it must die down. The Karnataka High Court must intervene in this matter. Another argument put forth by the petitioner was that hijabs are permitted in Kendriya Vidyalaya schools across Karnataka. The government has maintained that nowhere are hijabs allowed. They're saying that status quo ante must be maintained, which means that before this controversy, hijabs weren't allowed, and that should be the case now too. Taking this back across to Nolan Pinto, who's reporting from Udupi. Nolan, essentially, from, the High Court observations, from all that's played out in the hearing over 11 days in the High Court, it will perhaps come down to one question on whether the three-judge bench believes that hijab is an essential part of Islam, or if it's not, because there's been a lot of technical arguments on that front. A copy of the Quran was even brought into the High Court to look into that particular issue and establish whether it's an essential part of the religion.
Well, Akshita, now over the period of 11 days, the court actually had to deliberate now because of the arguments that came out. They had to deliberate on several interconnected issues. Out of these issues, three major points were actually argued. One, whether wearing of hijab is an essential religious practice or not in Islam. That is point one. Point two, whether the state can interfere in such matters. And point three, whether wearing of the hijab comes under or is protected under the freedom of expression and also the right to privacy. So these were the three main issues that were actually argued, deliberated, and the court would have been actually deliberating specifically on these three main issues. Now, we spoke to many senior legal experts, and they said that there could be just three outcomes. This is according to legal experts. We have to wait for 10:30 to see what really happens there. But legal experts tell us that one, the court might just say that yes, it's an essential religious practice and students are allowed to wear their hijab to enter schools and colleges. Two, the court can say that no, it is not an essential religious practice, and there ends the story. Point three, it can also go that, yes, the court can say that it is not an essential religious practice, but it is still protected under the rights of freedom of expression and rights of privacy. So these are the three outcomes that legal experts, legal luminaries are actually talking now. that could come, but you never know what really happens, so it's best to wait for 10:30. The deliberation was basically and primarily on whether wearing of the hijab is part of essential religious practice in Islam or not.
And you can trust us here on India Today to get you those live updates when they come in at 10:30 this morning on the High Court verdict with regards to this hijab controversy. Nagarjuna, I want to understand from you also the government's response. You know, we've spoken about the petitioner's demand in the High Court. How did the government really respond to this entire controversy? Their stand in court was very clear. They said hijab was never allowed. Hijab should not be allowed anytime now. No religious symbol should be allowed in educational institutes. But there were also questions asked of the Burma government on how they handled the fallout of this controversy, particularly the protests and violence that broke out in parts of the state.
Well, that is true. In fact, the government order was that no matter what it is, the dress code will have to be followed, and the government stuck to it. In fact, they had let the College Development Authority to decide on it, but they did stick to it no matter what the pressure from the student side was. When I did speak to the sources within the government, the top sources said that the government was in a catch-22 situation, looking at all the violence breaking out. There was toll painting in Bagalkot, Shumaga, and there was flag hoisting of that Kesari flag, the saffron flag being hoisted in Shumaga. All this did have an impact on the government because they were cornered in the assembly as well as to what did the government do to control the situation. If you speak to the government sources, they say it's very easy to condemn us, but if at all one constable in somewhere in some district Lati charges a student, the opposition would attack us itself, saying this government is trying to beat up students when they are protesting. So the government had to walk a tightrope to maintain law and order as well as to ensure that their orders will be put into practice. So the Chief Minister and his whole cabinet say that they're happy in the way things turned out. They're happy with the way that violence also came down, as in the court order took 11 days. So students also got busy with the exams and the syllabus. The government did say this. They successfully managed to implement whatever the government order was. This is not made by the present government. The uniform law was existing over the last 30 to 40 years, and it was not on us, is what the BJP government says. But however, today we'll have to see which side is the happiest, because you have seen the arguments and you have seen the lawyers who have in both sides who have argued. There was in fact there was a time when the BJP in Karnataka accused Devdutt Kamath of representing the Congress party and saying that the Congress is representing the other side and it is fighting for someone else, is what the accusation and the allegations from the BJP from Karnataka came in. So it will be interesting as to how this order will be interpreted and the next course of action, because politics in Karnataka will be alive because of hijab for the next few weeks at least.
And let's just hope, you know, that some of the ugly scenes that we witnessed during this entire controversy of the protests, the violence, none of that happens. You know, if Nolan, last time around, that kind of violence that broke out in Karnataka, the government was accused of doing nothing, of just being bystanders when, you know, there were incidents of this violence that broke out. This time around, they're leaving nothing to chance. But have there been any incidents of, you know, protests being organized right now with the announcement that came in yesterday that the High Court is going to be delivering its verdict today?
Well, Akshita, as of now, it's a wait-and-watch policy being followed by both the sides. Now, the government did not want to take any chances. We saw what really happened. Nagarjun very clearly stated in Bagalkot, in Shimoga, there was stone pelting. Then there was that incident in Mandya where a girl was heckled. So the government does not want all this bad sort of publicity. And that's the reason why Section 144 has been imposed. At all the schools and colleges that we have actually gone, there are police personnel present outside, especially in Shimoga, where we were there. In fact, we saw what really happened, and that's the reason why Shimoga itself, or in particular, Reserve Police, Rapid Action Force personnel have been posted outside, especially in sensitive areas. So Shimoga district, Bengaluru, Udupi, and also Bengaluru, these are sensitive districts for the government when it comes to both the communities, and they do not want to take any chances. But again, among or between both the communities, both will be eagerly waiting and watching what really happens at 10:30, because the government all along has been stating that it is a uniform. We have nothing to do with this. The Advocate General says that the government per se does not want to interfere with religion. It is left to the CDCs or the college development committees to decide what is the uniform to be followed. So they have washed their hands off this, saying that the CDCs will decide. And that is very important to see what really happens today.
Okay, Nolan, Nagarjun, thank you for the moment for joining us. Of course, you're going to be joining us at 10 again this morning as we count down to the verdict from the Karnataka High Court. Will this finally end the entire hijab controversy that we've seen play out not just in Karnataka but reverberate across the country? We'll know post 10:30 this morning. Thanks again, Nagarjun and Nolan, for joining us.